My favorite quote from the Bible is to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. And I think that part of humility comes from knowing history. And I've laid out for you before the historical fact that a saint, St. Augustine, no one in here is saying it to my knowledge, but St. Augustine didn't even believe that life began at conception. The Puritans, their name is literally pure. The Puritans didn't consider abortion murder. The 1971 Southern Baptist Convention didn't consider abortion murder. In fact, they went further than this current bill to suggest that there ought to be protections for mental health. And I can sit here and I can talk about how we're going to be doomed to repeat history if we don't know our own history. Some of you clearly don't even care what your own religious traditions have taught you.
Please direct your debate toward me, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. But I figured I'm a man. Not in the football coach kind of way, but in the way that I ought not to be speaking on this subject. And instead, I think that the women's voices ought to be heard on this because it is the women that will be impacted. So I found a poem from Florence O'Donnell Maher in 1937. And for decorum purposes, I'm going to leave one word out. But I think you'll figure it out. He has spoken. Oh, and by the way, anytime you hear the word Pope or Vatican, just think of us. He has spoken. The Pope's encyclical. And from the gates ajar, we hear the descendant of Peter speaking from Rome afar. He would bid us to have more children, to live in this world of men. What does he know of childbirth? Has he labored again and again? Oh, easy it is from St. Peter's to send out a message like this, and easy to give absolution and say, multiply like a fish. But will the descendant of Peter in illness come to my home? In illness give succor and smooth fevered brows? Or will he send prayers from Rome? And if when my babies are hungry, will the good fathers drive to our door and give beautiful aid to large families from the Vatican's golden store? If motherhood makes us pot-bellied and haggard and wan as a witch, would he give us a facial or tell us to live like a... The good father is wise with the wisdom of old, but alas, he's a man and he's only been told. Has he ever seen starving and famine or drought? Does little faces and limb fall, frail, once so stout? Mothers and fathers might feed one or two, but try to feed 10 on 1 pound of stew. Mothers, the mighty Red Cross could give succor abroad, but here on our own we must seek a relief board. Peter in Rome, distinct Father in heaven, must we bring in the world little nurslings to die, to starve and to want, for chaste wedlock must I. But Rome is infallible, the edict will stand, and many a woman, at least in this land, will be a good liar, a good hypocrite. And that's what you've done today with your nice edict. Vote no.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members. Mr. Speaker, I actually rarely raise to debate an issue that isn't considered some leadership priority. It's not changing the way we structure government. It's not creating agencies like law or some major issue in the state. Mr. Speaker, I remember sitting in here as I thought about whether or not I would debate this bill 3 years ago. We had a pastor that gave a sermon, gave a talk to us on Thursday about not confusing the sacred for the profane. When you think more on that, I can't help but rise to debate this issue. When I cast my vote today, I do think we need to listen to some people that aren't really being listened to. But the people that I'm listening to are the unborn. The people I'm listening to are the ones that don't have that chance. I'm incredibly proud of the way this chamber has handled this issue. I'm incredibly proud of the seriousness we've got on both sides, and nothing I say is meant to be an attack on anyone that feels differently. But I want to be clear what we are doing and who we are speaking for, and those of us that voted yes, we are listening, and we are listening to those that have no voice and have no choice. This bill takes into account and takes two lives at issue. the life of the mother and the life of the child. And it looks at them equally. It says they both have value. If there is some reason, some serious risk of loss of life to the mother, it doesn't apply in this case. We are talking about, at the end of the day, selective convenience abortions. This has nothing to do with birth control. This bill won't even touch birth control in any way, shape, or form. This bill talks about abortions of convenience, where that child has no say. You know, we did have, by the way, the representative from Oklahoma City in the room. We did have a female in the room working on how we're going to craft this bill, making sure we looked at the mother's life of having absolutely equal value, and that was taken into account. And this bill still does that. We talk about whether or not it's unconstitutional. Mr. Speaker, the courts have historically said that anything dealing with licensures belongs to the states. And in addition to that, abortion is a political issue that the citizens should have their vote counted on. And the fact that the court has ripped it away is a travesty of justice. As a lawyer, it's disgusting. It's why we have this issue. Why it's the political issue of our day, because we take it away. We want to talk about historically, which I think are great points, historical views on abortion. I'd like to pull up language from the original Hippocratic Oath. Similarly, I will not give to a woman a pessary to cause abortion. This is a universal truth, that children have value, that unborn lives have value. And somehow we treat them like they're valueless. On the issue of whether or not we will provide services, forgive me if that issue very much rings hollow in my mind as I look back on House Bill 2592, which did, by the way, provide $2 million in services to women who chose life, provided for their health care, provided for their lodging, provided for their food, and which passed with 19 no votes after debating for about an hour on that bill. At the end of the day, we need to recognize there are those in our society, I'm not saying anyone in this chamber, but there are those in our society that give no credence to an unborn life, that celebrate selective abortions. Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to stand up for those that aren't in the room right now. I'm proud to stand up for those who are unborn and don't have a voice. And members, I'm asking you, Mr. Speaker, I'm asking that we will cast our vote today for those, for the truly least among us. And we will cast aside these false ideas that somehow it doesn't take into account the life of the mother, which it clearly does. Cast aside these false ideas that it has anything to do with contraceptive, doesn't even touch that issue. And cast aside the idea that it's somehow unconstitutional. The court has to violate its own edicts. And if it's going to do that, I wish it would just say it. We will never let you do anything on abortion, regardless of stare decisis. Regardless of the fact that past law, we are doing it exactly the way you told us to do it. We are giving you something that is fully within state's power. I will say that to any federal judge who someday may listen to this, who has a lifetime appointment. We are following what they have asked us to do, and to do anything short is to undermine the very credibility of the judiciary, and to tell the people their voice doesn't matter anymore, and it should. This is an appropriate bill. I pray, members, that when you cast your vote, you will cast your conscience, and I will respect anyone that votes any opposite of me. But I am asking you that you will vote for those who are not in this chamber and who have no voice, and you will give them an opportunity to have a voice.
Members, I know that this is an issue, as has been stated, that brings out a lot of emotion. It brings up a lot of trauma for a lot of people. And we talk about experiences of others who are in this room or aren't in this room. And no one story that we've heard, or that we've heard outside this building, or we've heard today, no one story is the same. And that's why I'm opposed to this bill. Because this is a complicated issue. I think the length of time that we've spent on this bill shows that it's a complicated issue. And it's a very fact-specific inquiry when we talk about all of the wide-ranging stories on this issue. And it's a very nuanced issue. That's something that I think sometimes we get away from in this building. We don't want to see the nuance. We want it to be black and white. We want it to be one or the other. We want it to be a binary issue because that's easier. Well, folks, this is not an easy issue. And it's not black and white. Because there are a lot of situations that we've heard today that have a lot of nuance. And for us as a legislative body, for us as politicians, to wade into the nuance, into the most personal details of a person's life, the most personal details and the most excruciating moments of a family who are experiencing some of the situations that we've talked about today. I truly cannot imagine a more personal moment or a more personal story in a family's history or family's life than the excruciating decision that people go through in these types of situations. And so for us to say that we know better, that we know what is best for you, to insert ourselves as politicians into this most personal situation, I think it's just wrong. And forgive me if all of these arguments about preventing abortion and decreasing the number of abortions, if they ring hollow to me. Because I've been in this building for 10 years, and I have yet to see a measure that actually decreases the number of abortions in this state. I have yet to see a bill that enacts the policies that have worked around the country, that have worked in Tulsa, that have worked in Colorado, these places that are very close to us, that have decreased the number of unwanted pregnancies, teen pregnancies, and abortions. When you want to solve a problem, I think it just makes sense to look at why the problem exists in the first place and address those issues. We know that people who choose abortion, they do so for a number of reasons, but we hear a lot of the same reasons coming up. One of the reasons that is most often cited is, I can't afford to have another child. Because I will remind you, Mr. Speaker, that most women who have abortions already are mothers. And they don't feel that they are in an economic, financial, personal situation where they can afford to have another child. And I think that is the failure of the state government that we should be focusing on. That people are in the situation where they simply cannot afford to have another child. They're working multiple minimum wage jobs. They can't afford the cost of daycare. They can't afford to live, let alone support other people. And so if we want to address the reasons why people choose this option, let's do that. I am here to have that discussion. But that requires us, as a body, to get into the nuances, to get into the root causes of this very personal situation. So let's do that. Let's engage in a fact-specific debate and actually solve the problem. I would encourage the members to vote now. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So many things that have been brought up this morning, and I believe it comes down to one critical point: the value of every person. I'll start to quote something from the book, and you'll all recognize it. God so loved the world, and that love wasn't selective to a certain number or a certain portion. It was to the red and the yellow and the black and the white, the old, the young, the American, the Chinese, the African. And may I say, to the born and to the unborn, the love of God is very real. In the book of Jeremiah, the Lord spoke about Jeremiah and said, "Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee." The Lord cared about Jeremiah in the womb. And the Lord is also no respecter of persons. He cared about you and I when we were in the womb. He cared about every baby that's been in the womb. Now, we've heard various things discussed. We shouldn't punish for this. Well, may I ask, should we punish for what we regard as regular murder? Should we say, well, let's look at the core situation. Probably the murderer grew up without a father. Well, that can be addressed in due time and due place. But we still have to say murder is wrong. You can't murder. And there is a punishment for murder. We are told that the government shouldn't be involved in this. This is an unnecessary action of the government. Now, from various political persuasions in this gallery, in this house this morning, we might debate, is this or that a function of government? But I believe we would all agree a core function of government is the protection of innocent life. We've heard, that decision should be between a woman and her doctor. If that's all there was to it, I would agree. What about the baby? Doesn't the baby get a decision? Doesn't anyone want to defend the baby, the defenseless, the poor, the marginalized, the rejected? No, it matters. The baby. We're told that we should not impose morality on others or legislate morality. How dare us? In our statutes, we have that burglary is a crime. We've all voted it to be a crime. Now, some have said the penalty should be less, others that the penalty should be more. We all agree that burglary is a crime. That is a moral judgment. We all agree that murder is a crime. May I submit to you, we are in fact doing our duty when we declare that murder of the unborn is a crime. We are told that this is crazy. This is insanity, doing the same thing again and again. They've tried it for years to outlaw abortion. It's never worked. William Wilberforce gave 30 years of his life to end slavery. And he failed again and again and again. They said it's the law of the land. You're not going to change it. You shouldn't change it. People should have the choice to have them if they want to. He died and slavery still exists. But 3 years later, after he died, slavery was abolished in Great Britain. It's worth it. It's a fight worth having. We are told that the Supreme Court is the supreme law of the land. We cannot protest what they have done. May I remind us, Mr. Speaker, that there is a court even higher than the Supreme Court of the United States. There is the law of God that is higher than the court of any government. And abortion is a violation of the law of God. We're told that, abortion allows a woman to be autonomous, to get an education, a career. So if killing that unborn children allows that woman that freedom to do that, why should she not be able to kill her newborn? New York State, Virginia, they say maybe she should have that right. No, murder is murder. We are told that we're playing politics with reproductive choices. No, we're protecting the unborn life that has value. We're told that government shouldn't tell a woman what to do with her body. And I agree. If a woman has some situation in her body, some kind of growth, some kind of disease, should she get this operation or that? I wouldn't presume to interfere in such a thing. But there's not only the woman and the doctor. What about the baby? This all comes down to the fact and the reality that the baby has a life. We are talking about persons. We're talking about human beings. This slaughter of abortion reminds me of what we could read about in Psalms chapter 106. They serve their idols, which were a snare to them. Yea, they sacrifice their sons and daughters unto devils, and shed innocent blood, even the blood of their sons and their daughters, whom they sacrifice unto the idols of kings. And the land was polluted with blood. Now, I don't desire to be unnecessarily gruesome, but for us to understand the context of this issue, we must face some horrific reality. Now, if I say the word Holocaust, everyone knows what I'm talking about. Everybody's mind, within the hearing of my voice, goes to Germany, early 1940s, what was done to the Jews. And probably everybody's mind goes to 6 million. What a horrific crime. Abortion, Holocaust times 10. 60 million abortions. Several million more than that, but it's at least 60 million abortions since 1973. It's time to say stop. None of those 60 million lives can be saved. They're gone forever. This past destruction can never be erased or undone, but the time has come to stop. It's time to stand up for the oppressed, the rejected, the poor, the defenseless, and the marginalized. Mr. Speaker, it's our day to do what's right. This is our time to stand for what's right. This is our time to make history. We can do something today that will be able to tell our grandchildren that we did something to stop this horrific slaughter. We can build a legacy today. I humbly ask you to vote yes on this bill.